the Nashville 2 podcast with your host, Edward Fox.
G'day, viewers and listeners. It's Ed Fox back with another great episode of Nashville 2, your Nashville 2. Maybe you or somebody you know needs their story told. It's Middle Tennessee stories. I don't care whereabouts in Middle Tennessee. We call it Nashville 2 because, quite honestly, that was the domain I got. So that's why we call it Nashville 2. But I just like the alliteration there, Rachel, where it says Nashville 2. Your Nashville 2. Let's tell your story. So if you or somebody else would like to be a guest on the show, be sure to reach out to us and get registered and come on the show. Today, my special guest is Rachel Peck, and Rachel is with 431 Ministries. And we're going to learn all about 431 Ministries, how we can help, what they're up to, and how we can get involved. So welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yay, I'm glad you're here too. So all the technology challenges have been solved, and we've got, Zoom when it works, and I remember to unmute works well.
So, I've done that too.
Yeah. Rachel, how long have you been with 431 Ministries?
So my husband and I are actually the founders. We founded it 5 years ago, but it actually started even 2 years before that. So it's been around for about 7 years, unofficially, 5 years officially.
Right. And what led you to you guys deciding to start?
It was completely an accident. We had no idea the way that crisis care was handled in Middle Tennessee for women in particular. We were both working full-time jobs and wanted to use our home and our farm for something. We'd both felt overlooked as teenagers, thought we'd be in some kind of teenage, youth ministry, youth care situation. And every door just kept closing. And so we just prayed, okay, Lord, lead us to where you need us to be. And a woman walked into the office that I was working at, and she went up to the receptionist, and she's like, I'm about to be homeless, and I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. And they sent out a company-wide email, which never happens. And it came across my desk, and essentially all they were asking was, does anyone know of affordable housing for this woman, mother-in-law suite, guest-free room, anything, she needs help. And I read that and immediately felt like, oh, I need to do something about it. And I was like, that's crazy. We live in about 700 square feet. Surely, I've seen the mansions of the people who work here. Surely someone else will step forward. They've got mother-in-law suites. I've seen,
Right.
It's not me. But I forwarded the email to my husband and just thought, well, he'll say no. I'll feel great, kind of bless her from afar and move on with my life. And of course, I'm sitting here talking to you. So that didn't happen. Instead, he responded about 5 minutes and said, yes, I think we're supposed to help her. And what we learned is that, again, it's this idea that crisis care is not handled well in Middle Tennessee, unfortunately, especially for women.
Define crisis care. What does that term mean?
Yeah, so crisis care is for someone who has reached a point in their lives where they are unable to move forward by themselves. They have experienced either an unexpected pregnancy, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a job. They have, go through a domestic violence situation, whatever that looks like. What we saw is that there are these buckets that if you fit into this bucket, then you're safe, and we had a space for you. With this particular mom, she had a full-time job, and she had been targeted for months by a man who wanted to claim that he wanted to help her because she was a single mom. And he said, you need a better car, you need a better place, let me just help you, and spent months just trying to convince her. And it got to the point where she finally was like, well, I'm not interested in anything, but what does that look like? Because I'm struggling. My car is going to break down again. What are you offering to do? And he put her into an apartment she couldn't afford, into a car payment she couldn't afford, and said, just pay me back when you want. Except when he then moved her into the apartment, he then put a contract on the table with a list of the physical obligations that she now had to pay him back with, or she'd be homeless. And so she said, I would rather be homeless. I do not want my daughter to grow up and see me living in this way, and it's not worth this. And so he immediately reversed all payments. She became homeless, but she couldn't go to a domestic violence shelter because she had no physical violence against her. And
Right.
She couldn't even go to a homeless shelter because she already had a full-time job. And so we saw this gap for women who had pieces of stability, but not stability. They had the basis for it. She had a community at her work. She had the full-time job, the financial stability. She was perfectly capable of making and keeping a budget, but because of the way that she had been targeted, she was now left with nothing, and she would have had to give up her job to have a roof over her head. And we said, this is awful. We are pushing women into more crisis before giving them help. We are requiring them to be in worse situations before they ever get to be a place of healing and of safety. And so we actually met with her. Heard her story, heard that this is not something that had been consistently happening. She had been taken advantage of by the system. Her car payment was $600 a month.
Wow.
On a car that was a 2002. Like, she had fully been taken advantage of in every way, shape, and form in this situation. And by someone who claimed to have her best interest in mind. And so we met her, heard her story, invited her to live in our home, and she moved in as a complete stranger less than 24 hours after we met her in person for the first time. But she became part of our family. Her and her daughter, we did birthdays together. We did, went to church together. They came to our friends' homes with us, and she became like a sister to me. We jokingly still call each other that. And 7 years later, she just bought her first home in Chapel Hill. And we just helped her put the pieces of stability back in place. My husband was a recruiter, so he helped give her interview skills and worked with her on her resume, and she's working for the state now. Her daughter went back into the school system where she had been behind. Her car, she ended up being able to get out of that car payment and had a complete car by the time she left us, and she was able to move by herself and maintain stability and maintain independence, just because we spent 9 months mentoring her and building up her confidence as much as anything else. A lot of the skills she already had, but she didn't believe that she had them because she had been taken advantage of. And so that's where our ministry exists for women who have come out of that crisis. They have taken this many steps. If you're in active crisis, if you're fleeing a domestic violence situation, if you are facing homelessness, there are those places. But if you have a job, if you've reached some point of stability, you now have two choices. You can either come to us and we can help get you there, or you fall back into crisis. And so we want to be that stopgap and keep them from coming back into crisis.
Right. It feels like with all the good work that those organizations do, you sort of just lift their head a little bit out of the water so they don't drown, but then that's it. Once they got them to their job is done as far as they're concerned, and they can't do everything, right? I'm not saying that they're failing. It's failing the women. It's failing the people that are in crisis. But their mandate is to do X. And when they do X, that's all they can do.
Correct.
And so it feels like they would walk away because they've done their part, and then that they would just slowly sink again. And so you're there to give them more buoyancy and to push them further up into sustainability, if I'm understanding.
That's exactly it. The way that a lot of people look at ministry or crisis or helping human services in general is there's kind of three different categories. There is the crisis care, that's right, lifting them up out of the water. Then there's the rehabilitation phase, and then the development. The really terrible analogy I have is if someone gets their arm cut off at their elbow, the crisis care is the one that cleans the wound and they bandage it for you. Rehabilitation may teach you how to bandage it, but that's all they do, right? It's already clean. They're just continuing to bandage it and show you how to bandage it yourself. Development is, well, how are you supposed to live without an arm? How are you going to do it now?
Right.
You may never get that arm back, and that's okay. And learning to be content with that and learning how to move forward with that reality. We're not telling them, oh, it's going to be possible to regrow an arm. No, I'm sorry, but we can teach you how to do it now without it.
Right.
And that's where we come in, and that's what our specialty is. It's that development. We may teach them how to change the bandage, but most importantly, we teach them how to live without that arm.
So if we've got people in crisis that you could help, that maybe that are listening to this podcast right now, what would you like to say to them?
That it's going to be okay. That you are going to be okay, and that you're life circumstances that have brought you to this moment do not define you. You have a path forward. There is always a way out. And if you're a woman and this is something that you need, that you have gotten this far, but now you're stuck, now you're lonely, you're isolated, you don't know where to go next, we are here for you. And we can walk you from your point here to where you want to be.
Awesome. And Rachel, tell us about some of the other things that, obviously you've told us that first story, and that's how you got started. And, we have a similar story to that with a family. We were sitting at a Denny's that we never go to after church one Sunday morning, and it's 92, 93, 94, somewhere in there. And it's on the other side of town from where our church was. We have no idea to this day why we ended up at that Denny's. We're sitting there, and in the booth next to us is a guy that's just like go out of the army, married to a Guatemalan woman. They got a couple of kids, and they're talking about, well, how are we going to live in our car? We can't afford the hotel anymore, and I haven't found a job yet. That sort of stuff, right? Yeah. And I'm looking at my wife, and so I start talking to her quietly, hey, we've got an extra room, but we had 956 square feet, right? So it's a little 3-bedroom bath, right? And I think that was including the garage that had been converted, but wasn't usable for anything because it had no heat or air or anything. Yep. And we invited them into our house, and they lived with us for about 3 weeks until he got a job and they got out, and, but that's the interesting thing to me, that we could all do more, but sometimes we're so afraid, we're so scared that maybe we need somebody like 431 Ministries that we can sponsor and provide for, that can do the things that we don't know how to do. Yeah. Because that could have turned out horribly wrong, but it didn't.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. For both of us, right. Like part of it is that we learned how to vet, vet better the stories, and know, like, for her, a key part of us understanding her story, and one of our values is that we believe in equipping without enabling. Like for us, like if this had been a consistent thing where she had been taken advantage of for her entire life, and she just continued to try to find new people to, to help take care of her, that's not something that we could have gotten involved in and could have had an impact on her, because that's a whole different cycle. And that is, what we have grown into is like, we want to stop the cycle for these moms and these kids, because we see, like, the statistics speak for themselves. In Murray County, about 30% of all households are single mother households. In Davidson County, it's almost 40%. In Williamson County, it's slightly less at 16%, which is not surprising given the cost of living, but also 16% is still really high. Yep. That's a lot of people and women who do not have services as single moms. And so, we have now grown to a place of having a client care team that vets them and makes sure that they are able to do what we need them to do. Like, again, we don't do the crisis care. And so to be part of our program, you have to be in a house already. Like, we no longer can provide housing. But we can still, we can lead you to resources for housing and then step in with you as soon as you have that. And you also have to have a job, because one thing that we found is that there are a lot of women who feel entitled, that they didn't make the choices that led them to the situation. And I get that. But again, just like it may have not been your choice that the arm was chopped off. Like, you may have not put it into the machine, but it's gone. And so teaching them how to, like, get to this place of, like, you are going to be okay, and you are responsible for changing the circumstances to build the resources to move on and make a difference for your family, even if it wasn't your choice in the beginning. And so that's part of what we do, is once they have the house and the job, then we walk alongside them to get all the other soft skills, hard skills. We teach them, like, we even teach them how to budget. We give them financial mentors. We partner them with licensed professional counselors for them and their children, because we know that the situations they've been in have been traumatic. But, the goal is the independence. The goal is that they have skin in the game, and that they are coming alongside, and that they, that it's not where they're stuck with us for years and years and years, that it is a time frame. It is a 3 weeks, 3 months, 18 months is the longest client that we've had, which is fine. Like, it coming out of a really hard situation, there's custody battles and there's all types of things. Like, every story is unique, but being able to walk them to, like, this is the end goal is important. And to have that in mind, to have the vision, that's actually something we teach them, is how to have vision for your life again when you have no hope. How do you get back hope?
Right. It's just, I've been there, right? Where you don't know how you're going to get through the day, let alone a week or a month or a year. And you lose sight of setting those goals and having that vision, because you never know. You don't know how you're going to put food on the table today.
Correct.
Setting a goal for 3 months from now, like, that was always so hard for me, as a kid. I had left school at 15 and started my first business, and it's a struggle. Right.
Yeah.
Even though it all looks, and we see that with social media today, we see how people curate their life through social media and make it look really good. And then you look behind the curtain and you realize it's not as good as you're putting out there on Instagram and Facebook,
Yeah, exactly.
As a business owner, it can be tiring paying cash for everything you need. Well, there's a better way. Introducing Trade Bank of Nashville. Our bartering service lets you exchange goods and services without the need for cash transactions. Trade Bank helps businesses like yours reduce expenses, bring in new business, and keep your cash where you need it most. Find out more and join our barter network today. Start getting what you need without paying cash, because sometimes barter is just smarter. Apply today at nashville.tradebank.com.
Part of what we do with the women as part of our program is give them a care team. And so they have a personal mentor, they have a financial mentor, they have a licensed professional counselor, and they have a staff member that is their staff member that keeps track of them and, like, where they're at and how they're doing. And for the first bit of time, it's the staff member that gives them the vision, right? You're okay. You're going to be okay. There's going to get to a point, because even if you're not ready to set those for yourself, the reality is that years, months, days, weeks, months, years, they go by without us even thinking about them. And suddenly we're 5 years down the road and we're like, oh, I wish I'd thought about this, And so that's part of what our team gets to do, is come alongside them and go, again, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And there's going to be 1 year that you look back and go, I'm so glad I put in the work today. And because it is work. It is hard. It is, that they have to have a personal commitment to their own success. We can't want it for them more than they want it for themselves. But getting to walk alongside someone in a vulnerable season and getting to celebrate their successes with them, because that's the other thing, is, like, you get so caught up in putting food on the table that you forget to celebrate you got food on the table.
Right. Yeah, those little steps. How do we eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? And we forget that when the minutia of life gets in the way and we're struggling, we forget to celebrate that success of, one more day with food on the table, closer to the job, closer to everything. So how do you guys benchmark your success? Are you able to look at numbers and say, of the people that we've helped, 80% have gone on, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so we developed what we call our self-sufficiency matrix, and I was actually working on digitizing it, which is super exciting. And so it will be at one point a online survey that people will be able to take. And so our clients, it's 16 different categories, everything from safety and stability to financial. Do I know how to manage my own finances? Do I know how to manage my emotions as part of it? Do I know how to build a community? Do I know how to find resources if I don't have them at this moment? And so we have these 16 categories that we systematically, with our care team, walk the women from where they started. Our women come in at about 25%. On that self-sufficiency matrix. They score 25%, maybe a 30% at most, but they're always under 50%. And to graduate, they have to reach a 75% or above.
Wow.
Because we also believe that not everyone's going to be perfect. We don't expect 100%. Even our staff, like, there's seasons of life where stability is different. You're moving,
Right. Well, I was trying to tell, exactly. I've got 3 kids, all adults now. And they said, well, some years you we did more stuff and some years we didn't. I said, yeah, that's very simple. Some years we made more money and some years we made a lot less money, you know. And they're like, well, why didn't it stay the same? Because life's not like that. Opportunities come, challenges come, you know, and life is ups and downs, especially if you're an entrepreneur. So I think, you know, through those seasons of life that you talk about, understanding if we haven't had a good environment to look at and to look at those role models and stuff that go through the ups and downs, right? It's harder to know what that looks like.
And we base graduation on 5 of them. And so, you know, financial, they have to be safe in order to graduate. They have to have stability. They have to know how to handle their finances. They have to have independence, and they have to have community. And so those 5 things are required for graduation, because if you have those 5 things, then no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be okay. You may have a down season, you may make less money, you may have a season of loneliness, but those 5 things will keep you going. And you're not gonna, those 5 things will keep you from falling back into a crisis.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the goal for 431 Ministries? What is your next big dream that's out there for you guys?
Oh man, we want to have a place of our own. So right now we've got this small little tiny house office we're bursting at the seams. We have 5 team members. We're hiring 2 more positions. But we're just seeing like the needs are just exploding. And so in years past where we've had it's a whole application process. And so where in years past, you know, we might have had 50 inquiries overall to the ministry. This year we've had more than 50 actual applications. And so they have done the work to actually, they have talked to someone, they have heard about it, and they have done the work to apply. And we can only we only have spots for 9 women at a time right now, because it's restricted by funding and by staff. Right. And so we want to be able to grow that to chip away at that list of that need. Again, 30% just in Murray County. And that's, again, not where we serve all of Middle Tennessee. And to serve all of Middle Tennessee, we need those care teams. We need those additional staff members to help walk those women to set their goals, to hold the mission.
Are these paid staff members or volunteer staff members?
The care team is made up of both. And so we have the paid staff members they have 1 paid staff member that is their person on staff. They are available no matter what. That is their full-time job, to be there for these women. And then we also have that care team of volunteers that are supported by that same staff member, right? Because it's heavy to carry someone's burden. And so we give someone the space to be able to do that, not only for her client, but for her care team, to make sure that the care team is taken care of as they take care of her. And so, but we can't, our care team, our staff can only handle about 9 women at one time, because she's not just handling the client, right? She's handling the 2 mentors, the financial and the personal mentor. She's handling the relationship with the licensed professional counselor. And so that's 9 times 3, that's 18 people that she has to touch point, every single week, to keep them working towards those benchmarks.
So how could somebody help or contribute? With all of our listeners out there, and if some of them say, hey, we'd like to donate time, we'd like to donate things, we'd like to donate money, I mean, how can people help you?
Absolutely. So our website is 431house.org. And if you go to, you can do /give, and that goes straight to our donation page, /volunteer goes straight to our volunteer opportunities. And we've got a list. So we talked a lot about the side-by-side program, because that's the heart and soul of what we do. That's where the big life change happens. But we also have these additional, what we call petals of care. And these are focused areas for additional demographics. So we have one for women who are grieving the loss of a spouse, whether to death or divorce. And so we just had a conference, actually, a grief conference for women to walk through that grief process and learn how to hold their head up in this crisis as they walk towards that independence. And so our side-by-side clients, a lot of them went to that conference because it was additional care offered and additional services offered after the loss of their spouse. We have an 18 to 21-year-old pedal for girls who have aged primarily out of the foster care system or left really hard biological situations. Are
you saying petal or pedal? Like a bike pedal?
Like a flower.
Okay.
like a flower.
Okay.
And actually, I don't know if you want to share to allow me to share my screen, but I can show the pedal and kind of walk through our program and how the different pedals showcase.
Well, I might have to have you back because we're down to like the last 5 minutes. So,
oh my goodness, we are.
Yeah. So, and I've got one stacked right after you. Otherwise, we could run long. But why don't we do that? Why don't we have you back for a part 2, where you can do some more of that? Okay. So,
yeah.
We'll have all of Rachel's information in 431house.org access. Did I get that right? Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. Okay. So that'll all be in the show notes. So look for that wherever you listen to this podcast, or on any of the video platforms. It'll be on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. So Rachel, thanks so much for being on the show. In our last 3 minutes, what we like to do on the show is hidden gems of Middle Tennessee. So you probably already put these down, but I can't access that right now. So do you recall what your 3 hidden gems, or just make them up? I don't care.
And these are places that remind me that they're places that I like to go, or
right. So things that our listeners, one of the groups of listeners we have are people outside of Tennessee coming to the greater Nashville area or Middle Tennessee area. And, we normally talk about restaurants or hiking trails or churches or anywhere that's cool that you guys, where do you guys live at in Middle Tennessee?
We're in the Columbia area.
Okay, so in the Columbia, Spring Hill, Thompson Station area, do you have restaurants you like to attend, things that you like to do? So those are the hidden gems.
Yeah. So Legacy Coffee Company, gonna always recommend them. They're my favorite. They're partners of ours. But he air roasts his coffee right here in Columbia, and it is just amazing. We use it for everything.
And he has a shop as well as a roaster.
He has a shop that's in Neapolis right now. And so it's about halfway between Spring Hill and Columbia. So if you're driving down 31, look for Legacy. He's got a drive-through. We've got a coffee shop. He's super sweet. Tell Joshua Rachel said hi, like if you stop in. And then I just love the wildlife management area that is in the Culleoka area. There's 13,000 acres that people don't even know that's state land, that there is hiking trails and horse trails and places that you can go and just experience nature. And it's right here in Columbia and in Culleoka. So look for the Yanahali wildlife management area.
And our next guest has already joined us, Jim Morris. G'day, Jim. We're just finishing up this episode, and Jim's going to be on the next episode, or maybe not, depending on where my daughter slides them all together. Okay, so what's your third one there, Rachel?
Third one, let me think. I mean, I am just a fan of buckets. Anytime I go to downtown Columbia, it's right on the square. But really, I would just say the square in general. There's a lot of really fun restaurants. There's a lot of there's a fun little bookstore that you'll find me in anytime I get down to Columbia. Puckett's is there. Elia Day Spa. I would love to spend all day at Elia.
Okay, there you go.
So those are my hidden gems.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. And so you're a reader too, from the sounds of that. You like books?
I am. I love books.
What are you reading right now that you're enjoying? It can be fiction or nonfiction. I am not going to judge.
I am reading a leadership book by Henry Blackaby on Joshua, and I'm going through it with my leadership team, and it's been really cool. He's one of the few characters in the Bible who we don't hear a lot about his sin. Like, there's not a whole lot. He's just this solid character that comes in after Moses, and after Moses sinned greatly and can't enter the promised land, and leads the people into the promised land. And so it's been really cool to look at leadership from that perspective and from who he is and his life and a little bit we know about it.
Right. So. Wow. Well, cool. Well, I am revisiting 2 books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is an excellent business book. In fact, anybody that hasn't read it should.
Absolutely.
And I have a secret when I read books. I was trying to see where my stack of books is, but I just rearranged my office. One of the cool things is to take a pencil, and in the back of the book, in the inside flap, it's normally got a blank page.
Yep.
You write down, instead of highlighting the page, which is fine to do, but in the back of the book, write down the page number in pencil with the statement that you most want to remember about that page. And so what I can do is I can look up the back page of my book and read those 4 or 5 or 7 points and have a page number, and it brings it all right back to me, because sometimes I don't retain it all the time. But I learned that about 6 years ago, and that has been a remarkable change in how I manage my rereading of books, because you can reread in about 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I just was rereading Raving Fans, and that customer service aspect that sometimes is sorely missing with when I was young. I didn't know what customer service was or how to do it. So anyway, that's my tip. Raving Fans is really good. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Thanks for being on the show, and let's get you rescheduled to come on for part 2.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This is the Nashville 2 podcast with your host, Edward Fox.